think you would beat Ilia Abturo, Top Toro?
What happened to Conor McGregor? From one of the biggest stars in combat sports history, the first simultaneous double champion of the UFC, and one of the biggest names just in combat sports in general, to being in the news every other week for all the wrong reasons. What happened to Conor McGregor? And I think we'll go back and look at motivated McGregor just for reference. You know, the guy that knocked out Jose Aldo in 13 seconds, the guy that knocked out Eddie Alvarez to become the first ever simultaneous double champion in the UFC, and one of the best microphone skilled fighters in MMA and combat sports history. I think the Floyd Mayweather fight is a good place to start, because I feel like this was the beginning of the end for Conor McGregor. Now, leading up to the Mayweather fight, it was still Conor McGregor. He was still had good mic skills. He was still witty. He still seemed motivated. Then he fights Floyd Mayweather, and obviously, as expected, he gets outclassed. He's in new territory. Floyd Mayweather outclasses him, ends up finishing Conor McGregor. And 2 months after the Mayweather fight, Dana White announces that we're going to be seeing Conor McGregor versus Khabib. Now, obviously, this was McGregor's return back to the octagon, facing Khabib for the belt. And this would go down as one of the biggest fights in UFC history. And during the build-up, we saw McGregor and Artem Lobov beefing with Khabib and his team. And this was kind of where Khabib slapped Artem, and Conor McGregor just saw red from there. And this was where the bus incident took place, where Conor McGregor and his goons started attacking Khabib's team. They find him on the bus. They start throwing dollies at the bus, injuring different fighters on the bus. And McGregor ends up getting arrested, which would kind of be the start of things going wrong for Conor McGregor. He ends up getting arrested and sued for $50,000 because of this incident. Dana White's talking about it and how he could potentially be, you know, suspended from the UFC. And even in the press conference leading up to the Khabib fight, you could see an immediate change in Conor McGregor. He went from being witty and motivated McGregor to be an absolute mess in that Khabib press conference. It was broken McGregor. Don't get me wrong, he sold the fight perfectly. It's one of probably the funniest McGregor press conference out there. But you could tell there was something wrong with McGregor compared to normal fights. He was drinking, just seemed like a broken version of McGregor. And so the guy went from saying partying is a weakness for the soul to being a complete state, leading even up to the Khabib fight. And then he ends up facing Khabib, and this was one of the biggest soul-taking performances I think we've ever seen in UFC history. And the results of what happened after the Khabib fight is evident of this. He faces Khabib, and I mean, everyone said it. He gets smashed to pieces. He gets mauled throughout the fight with Khabib. One of the biggest beatings, probably definitely the biggest beating he's ever taken throughout his entire career. Ends up getting submitted by Khabib after that mauling, and he got absolutely smashed by Khabib. And I don't think he was ever the same after this performance. Not like he was sane coming into the fight with Khabib, but after this fight, he was never the same. Then we go back to March 2019, a couple months after the Khabib fight, and then we have the incident where McGregor ends up smashing somebody's phone, and once again, Conor McGregor gets arrested again, and he gets sued for $11K, which isn't a lot, but, you know, he's still back in prison. He's still, you know, in trouble with the law. And then 1 month after that, obviously McGregor has this new proper 12 Irish whiskey sponsorship that he's obviously promoting a lot. And then he goes into the bar, starts promoting his whiskey, and then the incident where he punches some random innocent old man for not taking a shot of his whiskey. He was only fined €1,000, which is obviously pennies to Conor McGregor, but punching an old man in a bar for not drinking your whiskey is, you know, I think that's more evident than anything else that he's definitely not in the right state of mind. And then we kind of go through McGregor's recovery era coming into 2020, and I think this is where we thought McGregor maybe might coming back. You know, we had that fight with Donald Cerrone, and even leading up to the fight with Donald Cerrone, he seemed a bit more calm. He wasn't trash talking Cerrone. He seemed a bit more sane, and he absolutely smashes Cerrone to pieces in just over a minute and gets back in the winning column in the UFC. And we thought maybe McGregor's back, and then he ends up facing Dustin Poirier a second time in early 2021. And then we start to see family McGregor, calm McGregor, the nicest version of McGregor we've ever seen. He was all happy with Dustin Poirier all week, seemed like a nice guy, didn't have a bad thing to say about anybody. And then he gets knocked out by Dustin Poirier for the first time in his UFC career in pretty brutal fashion. And I think, again, this is where he started going back to his old ways, and he was never the same after this fight as well. And then he faces Dustin Poirier the third time, and he got out trash talked by Dustin Poirier. He tried, you know, getting the whole trash talk gimmick back, getting, you know, back to no more Mr. Nice Guy. But even Dustin Poirier was out trash talking Conor McGregor. He looked like a shell of his old self, and he was already thinking about this boxing match with Manny Pacquiao. He wasn't 100% in MMA, and then he faces Dustin Poirier and obviously gets his leg absolutely snapped in that fight, and he would never be seen again in the octagon. A couple months after that, in October 2021, he's already back in Italy, and he's partying despite having this leg injury. He's already back to what he does best, which is partying. He ends up breaking an Italian DJ's nose in Rome, which is just classic Conor McGregor. 5 months after this, he's driving a Bentley, and he loses his driving license for a couple of years over dangerous driving. He gets a 2-year driving ban and a €6,000 fine. Again, in trouble with the law every few months. Seemed to be a bit of a recurring theme with Conor McGregor. And then he ends up acting, coming into, you know, more of some of the recent years, where he starts filming Roadhouse, and he's clearly blasting gear in this movie. I think people never really expected him to come back. And obviously, if you look at the size of his skull nowadays compared to what it was even 5 years ago at 170 when he faced Cerrone, it's a complete difference.
It was absolutely perfect.
That's true.
Amazing. was absolutely perfect. That's true. Amazing.
And then eventually we get to the Ultimate Fighter, where McGregor's scheduled to face Michael Chandler in the Ultimate Fighter, and he does. We see the Ultimate Fighter episode between Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler, kind of his first step in the right direction when it comes back to, you know, the UFC. And Team McGregor goes 0-1, 0-2, 0-3, 0-4, 0-5, 0-6, 0-7, until he finally goes 1-7 in one of the worst Ultimate Fighter performances in coaching history. And I think this is just evident of the state of McGregor and how bad his coaching was during this season of the Ultimate Fighter. And then we have the whole Miami Heat incident where McGregor's at the Miami Heat games. He punches the mascot and ends up injuring the mascot at the Miami Heat game, and he actually sent him to hospital, which caused controversy. But that wasn't even the biggest controversy of the night for McGregor, because then it came out after that there was SA assault allegations, where McGregor had allegations against him over what he did at that event, but they declined to go forward with charges, so nothing ever really happened to McGregor. And then we come into 2024, just fresh after UFC 300. Dana White in the post-fight press conferences announced the return of Conor McGregor against Michael Chandler. So we've now got a date. McGregor's back. He's facing Michael Chandler. He's back in the octagon. This should be a good step in the right direction for Conor McGregor. And then a few weeks after this, the press conference gets cancelled. And then a couple days after that, Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler is cancelled for the first time that McGregor's ever pulled out of a fight in his MMA career for a broken toe. And after this, he just ends up spending the rest of the year dancing with midgets, doing weird-ass live streams, kicking footballers, which brings us on to 2025. And this year alone has already been chaotic as fuck for McGregor. He starts off the year in, a massive court case where he apparently assaulted Nikita Hand, and he was offered to pay over 248,000 euros. There was this big thing going on over something that happened in 2018 where he essentially harassed a woman, or at least that was what the allegation said. And there was 1.5 million in cost this case. And this was one of the biggest criminal charges McGregor ever had to deal with. He ended up losing sponsorship with Proper 12, which, I mean, when you think of Proper 12, you think of Conor McGregor. So for him to be split apart by Proper 12, that shows the significance of the situation. He ended up getting cut out from like video games and different sponsorships. And then even just the last month, he's been pretty chaotic for McGregor. There's been a video going around of him knocking out somebody in Ibiza in some sort of club. Again, McGregor back to street fighting. And even just this week, BKFC, Conor McGregor's been involved in BKFC. You can already tell he's off his head at the press conference. He starts squaring up with Mike Perry, clearly coked out of his mind. And then he ends up kissing some mystery woman during a Florida beach day. So he's been cheating on his wife, which isn't, this isn't any news, McGregor cheating on his wife, but that's been something that's been going down recently this week. And then obviously with Alezea Banks, Conor McGregor in a naked scandal as he's been sending nudes to an artist online that's been leaked online. And this was right before Conor McGregor's birthday as well, that this has been going down. So now McGregor's been sending nudes, lifting weights with his to celebrities online. And I just where has this come from for Conor McGregor? And I kind of feel bad for his wife as well, because she's been with him since the early days. McGregor said it himself. She was with him before he ever made it. And the fact that there's been so many different images and so many different kind of controversies over McGregor cheating on his wife, I feel so bad for his wife, but I understand why she's still with him. I mean, you're talking about McGregor, the guy's got money. But anyway, this is the same guy that wants to run for president in Ireland, by the way. This is the same guy that's still going through presidential campaigns because he wants to be the prime minister or the president of Ireland. So for Conor McGregor to be doing that, I'm not sure the success that he's going to have. But when did it all go wrong for Conor McGregor? There's many different, times that people want to claim McGregor went wrong and where it all went downhill. I personally still think it was the Floyd Mayweather fight, because this was a career peak for Conor McGregor. He was in the prime of his MMA career coming into this fight. He made 100 million, which is more than generational money from this fight. It was an all-time peak in fame. It can only go downhill from here, and it did. I mean, he ended up getting finished by Floyd Mayweather, comes back to MMA, which is obviously his bread and butter. He should do well, and he gets the worst beating of his career, 2 back-to-back losses. And they say it's tough to get out of bed to do road work at 5 a.m. when you've been sleeping in silk pajamas, and that's the exact way you can describe McGregor. He had no hunger left. His career's just been a complete downfall since then. And where's he even going to be in just 5 years from now? Because in the last 12 months, he's broken his toe and pulled out of a fight. He's attacked a DJ. He's dealt with cases that have been serious. He's cheated on his wife, and he's now exposed little McGregor online. Where's this dude going to be in 5 years? It's pretty safe to say he's never fighting again. I mean, first of all, he's overloaded on juice. There's no way this dude's passing any steroid test. He's likely a middleweight. I'd also be surprised if McGregor makes welterweight these days. He hasn't trained, and he's not going to be in fighting shape. I think he gets smashed by anybody on the roster, and he's 37 years old. So I just want to know what went wrong for Conor McGregor. It's like one thing after another. This isn't just a one-year thing with McGregor now. It's like every other week there's something coming out with Conor McGregor. Now with this whole little McGregor situation between him and Alezea Banks, I thought I'd do this video. Let me know your thoughts on McGregor. What went wrong? When did it all start going downhill? And thank you for watching.